Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and welcome to PlayLoad. This is all my video game pickups for the month of September 2025, and well, let's just say good things come in small packages. We got some really cool stuff here, and one that's like a literal game changer at the end of this. Just you know, hold your horses. We'll get to it. It's pretty cool. Before we do that, though, if you guys could do me a favor, please like this video, comment down below, subscribe if you've never done that before, and check out all my social media stuff in the description. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, Patreon, Spreadshirt, Travel Channel, etc. I appreciate the support on those platforms. Thank you so much. Let's get into it. So, this month I was kind of a little bit all over the place. I started off with a trip in Atlanta. I also went down to Kansas City for Kansas City Retro. And oddly, most of the time I was actually home. I was just working on videos and stuff. But yeah, that said, I got some cool stuff and just the universe coalescing with certain things arriving. And yeah, we'll just start off here. Let's go. Now, this game was something I wanted when I saw the announcement for it. And I didn't realize only Limited Run Games was going to be doing a physical of it, but I was like, I got to get the physical of it, so I was all about that. This is Shinobi Art of Vengeance. So I wanted the Xbox versions. I don't know if Limited Run is ultimately going to be the only group ever doing a physical edition of this. I know they did one for, I think it was PS5 and Switch. There might be a PS4 version, I'm not sure. But at least with the Xbox version, that was the way it was. Now, Sega has started to do this as a general policy, is just anything that's kind of a lower print run title, they just let Limited Run Games do it. And, you know, say what you want about limited run games. You can love them, hate them, whatever it is. The fact that we did, in fact, get a physical edition of this is nice because Sega themselves wasn't too likely to ever do it. So I'm glad that exists. Another cool thing for me, of course, is not only is it like a beloved story, you know, Sega franchise, it was also, it also has a nice Shenmue reference in it. Ryo Hazuki is visible in the background. This is another one of those games that is just kind of Sega letting third parties do their games for them. If you're not familiar with this, I talked about it in my recent podcast. They have this thing, I think it's called Project Searchlight, where Sega like famously doesn't do a lot with most of their IPs anymore. But they essentially, rather than be Nintendo where they shut you down if you make a fan-made project, if they see a cool fan project, like, okay, would you like to make that for real? If it's good enough, you know, maybe we can make a real game here. And that's, I believe, the origin of how this worked. Because the game wasn't actually made by Sega. It was made by Lizard Cube. But I'm pretty sure that that's essentially how that went down. At least there have been other ones like that. So it's cool to see Shinobi make a return. And I don't know how viable it still is to get this, at least physically, but, you know, it's limited run games, and if it gets another distribution at some point, you know, cool, but I don't know. Either way, I didn't want to, I had FOMO. I had to get it because it's beloved Sega stuff. Now, something that definitely was not FOMO at all, I actually found this, I believe this was either in Atlanta or Nashville, because we took a trip down there. For the Xbox 360, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, just very generic name. This is one of those games where I've wanted it for a long time. It's not worth anything. You know, I think I paid like $6 for it. But it's a very common, like, childhood title. So every time I've ever seen it, the case is damaged, or the disc is damaged, or it's missing a manual. This one doesn't have a manual because the game never did, but at least it does have the insert, which was just like an advertisement thing. So I eventually verified this one didn't in fact have a manual at any point, but it was kind of that perfect storm of, okay, finally, there's my copy. Yeah, and I haven't played it yet, obviously, but like, yeah, I like me some Ninja Turtles, so why not? The Ninja Turtles is a brand, though, that is just, I completely lost the script on. I have no idea what they're doing with it anymore. I am 38, to be fair. So it's just like, okay, cool. I still love me some Turtles, but I doubt I'll get much out of that other than just the fun of having found it. Okay, now fast forward a bit. I went to Kansas City Retro, which is a great convention. I've been there many times. I was invited down there as a guest. And I ended up actually picking up quite a few things, including some really special stuff that we're going to save for the end here. But yeah, we managed to get some stuff. So the last thing I got at the whole show, which doesn't even really count, like the show had shut down and everybody was like clearing out. We're just doing dummy checks. I was just walking around. I checked the ground and I saw just this on the ground. I picked it up. This is one of those like plastic protector cases for like a DVD style game. I don't know why I'm including this. Like I could put it in. I could put Ratatouille in there, which was the first game I picked up. But yeah, whatever. I'm just pointing out that those exist. Anyway, but no, I actually bought this Ratatouille for the Xbox 360. Now, when it comes to the 360, I don't actually have like a specific collecting goal, like, oh, every release or anything. It's more just like what kind of intrigues me for one reason or another. The games are pretty cheap on 360 right now. It's kind of a good time to get them. And Ratatouille, you know, I had this, it's like a sub goal. I kind of wanted like all the Disney Pixar ones that were like had game adaptations, which is kind of a, not a dead concept, but much less explored than it used to be. Like I know WALL-E was on there, which I'm pretty sure I have, and Toy Story 3 and a few others. I think Ratatouille was the only one I didn't have. I think I have it for the OG Xbox, but I wanted the 360 version just because why not? It only cost a few bucks, and I was happy about that. I also decided to pick up some Xbox One / Series X games, Xbox ecosystem, I think is now what we call it. Because we've also reached a point where those games are getting real cheap too. So I was like, okay, I'll pick them up. First up, Grand Theft Auto, the trilogy, which of course consists of GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas. When this release came out initially, it was butchered, broken. It was not a solid release. But after a couple of years, they did a major firmware update for it. So they patched out a lot of the bugs. I think they even removed the original team that did the conversion, the ports over off of it. Essentially, they like rebuilt the game entirely. Now, obviously on disc, it's still going to contain the broken version, so you need the patch. But again, that's a used game, and I was like, whatever. I think, if I recall correctly, the dude I bought these from, because I also got Resident Evil 7 Gold, or Resident Evil 7 Biohazard Gold Edition. This one's cool because it's actually the DLC and all that on disc, as opposed to the Gold Edition for 8, which was just a code in the box. So I think the dude wanted like 25 and 15, and then just sold me the whole thing for 25. So it was basically just threw in. I think he just threw that one in, and I got that. So I was pretty happy with that deal. So there's some good stuff. And then from my buddy OK Chief, who guys, a lot of you will know, of course, from Game Chasers lore and R.I.P. Billy. Seriously, that whole situation really sucked. And yeah, I don't know if you guys saw Jay's memorial video to Billy. I was honored to actually film a cameo for that, so that was really cool. But anyway, I don't want to think about that. The point is, OK Chief, who is part of that squad, always sells stuff at cons, great guy. And he had something I actually wanted. He had this. This is just a PS Vita box. I actually got a PS Vita sent to me years ago, but I never had a box for it. And not that I needed one, but, you know, Chief had it for just like 20 bucks. And it's complete. Like, everything's in there. Even the little plastic inserts, all the little paper bits. It's like whoever had this just took the console out and put the box to the side. So, yeah, he sold that to me, and I was happy about that. Just pair it up with the system. That's very cool. So, yep. Now, everything else in this pile all came from the same seller. And I'm going to give him a shout out by name here, and you'll see why later. But his name is David King. And super nice guy. So basically what had happened is on the first day of the con, because it's a 2-day show, you know, I had my guest table set up, but we ended up putting the Sega Pluto, like, because I bring that around to most cons that I go to. We put it in like the museum section run by Joe Sullivan. And so my booth, I had much less to actually do because I didn't have to babysit it. So I kind of had the free roam to go wander around, but still I'm trying to be professional and stay near my table. David's booth was near my table. So when it was kind of slow, I would go over there and just chit chat and, you know, look at stuff. And he had cool stuff. He was into the same thing I'm into, which is just like weird box art and just funny, obscure titles. And that will be very relevant later. So for the moment, I want you to see everything else I got from him, and then a very special item will be coming up later. So he had like a few of these. This is the Hallmark Sega Genesis like keychain thing, or not keychain, Christmas ornament. So I actually, well, it's funny enough, it's right here. The Sega Dreamcast one is over here. There is the Sega Genesis one, and I don't even really celebrate Christmas much. Like, I enjoy it for the presents and the family and the food and all that, but it's not like a major holiday for me. I don't put up a tree or anything. But this is just more like, oh, in my house, I'm just going to have Sega stuff up at the holidays and all year round. But anyway, so that was cool because he was only charging a couple bucks for these. I also picked up for the 360 TNA Impact. Again, this is the same logic. It was just a game that just kind of caught my attention. And I was like, oh, that's weird. I don't remember ever seeing this. It obviously exists, but Kurt Angle, Sting, I want to say it's Rikishi. I mean, it's been a minute since I looked into a lot of the wrestling stuff. But it was also made by Midway, back when they were still Midway and not like part of Warner Brothers Group. And I was like, I just never remembered ever seeing this. So I was like, it was cheap, pick it up. Now, I actually put down some money. He had some, so... David, the only reason I'm bringing up him as a seller, and trust me, it'll make more sense later, is we were just chatting for a very long time, and he was kind of the stereotypical millennial who is getting out of retro games right now. I have talked about this in many videos on my channel. But basically gaming prices, like retro game prices, directly correlates with demographics. So right now, all the millennials, basically people in my age range, for the most part, are getting out of retro gaming and they're selling off their collections. And they're doing it because, hey, I'm married now, I got a house, I got kids, I got to put money into that, I don't have time for all this, blah, blah, blah. Where Gen X, which is older than them, now their kids are out of the house, but they're still in the workforce, so they're making money, and they kind of want to go revisit their childhood, which is why like early Atari stuff and maybe to some extent NES stuff is starting to go back up. And it's Gen Z, who is also the kids who grew up on things like 360, where that stuff's starting to go up. Like 360 is still kind of cheap, but like it's starting to go up a bit. So you just kind of follow consoles in waves. Anyway, so he was very much, he's like, oh yeah, he's like looking at like it's not just his duplicates or whatever. It's his collection he's selling. And I was like, you have to be around like 40. He's like, yeah. I was like, yeah, because you got the kid in the house, right? He's like, yeah. How'd you know? It's like every millennial is doing the same thing other than me. I'm a freak of nature. So he was like, he brought in all his stuff. He's just trying to make money. And that's fair enough. So he had a couple of games that I thought were really cool that were both heavy hitters, but he cut me a nice deal on them. For the PS2, this is Graffiti Kingdom. I remember actually seeing this in Japan, the Japanese version, and I almost picked it up until I looked up and found out it did in fact have a US release, and I was shocked by that because it looked like such a weird Japanese type of game. And I was like, it just blew my mind that this would have been released here, but it was. I just didn't think realistically I'd own it. And speaking of something that did come out in Japan that did not come out here, Huli Rula for the Sega Saturn, Japanese exclusive game. Kind of violated one of my rules about that. I almost never buy imports domestically. But the thing is, it's a really cool side-scrolling beat 'em up. I had never heard of it before. He kind of talked me into it. And then for the pair, I'm just going to be honest, he wanted $300 for the pair, and I wasn't prepared to do that. But he came way down. We found a nice happy median, and yeah, I was happy to get both of these. So that was really cool. Like I said, normally I would just be like, I'll wait till I find it in Japan. But on the one hand, he cut me a nice deal, and on the second hand, he was a really nice guy, and I wanted to support his shop and his effort because, but either way, that's a cool game. I ended up playing this for quite a bit. This was way more fun. And the cover in no way indicates what this game is. This is probably something I have seen in Japan where I just scroll past it because I just, little anime characters and it doesn't look like they're doing anything. Next title. But yeah, bad marketing, I guess, on that. But that's a fun game. And then, so one of the things that really bonded us here is that he had the same affinity for bizarre artwork and stuff that I have. So, for example, for the Sega Genesis, this is Funny World Balloon Boy. This is by a company called Realtek, and these are weird, because these are not officially licensed games, but they came out while the system was relevant. I actually had seen a couple of these over the course of time, and I never really understood what their story was. They have a weird mutant cartridge and everything, kind of a crappy manual, but they're clearly meant for the Sega Genesis. They even say it on the side. But now, interesting about these things is I had no idea what the story was, where these came from. I was at MGC a couple years ago, Midwest Gaming Classic, and I saw another one of these games along with a special controller. And I remember talking to the guy because I had never seen the controller before. And he basically was like, yeah, so the thing is, Realtek made these games, and they had their own controller for it that was required for the games to work. But they didn't really widely release the controller. So you can find the games every once in a while, but you won't really find the controller. So a lot of the time, these games, if you even find them, don't do anything. You try to boot it up. Now, I did not try that with this particular one. The other one, it was Whack-A-Critter or something like that, I think is the other one. I think I actually have it right there. But yeah, that game I could never get to function, and now I know why. This one I didn't even try, but basically you need the controller, and I'm probably never going to get it because it's effectively an unreleased controller. Either way, that didn't matter. I got it because it's just funny looking. It's like you got this little, I don't know, like little strange looking dude, and then you have like Winnie the Pooh on cocaine or something. It's just so bizarre. But yeah, now there will be more to that story in a bit. We're going to get to it because there was another thing I ended up picking up from David, but at the moment that's not relevant. So anyway, those are my pickups there, mostly from Kansas City Retro, right? Okay, moving on, before we circle back around, we have a package here. This was sent to me recently for the purposes of review by 8BitDo, or 8BitDo. I actually don't know how they pronounce that. And so this is going to get its own video, but just for the moment, I thought I'd show you what was in here. If I can get it out of the box. Okay, we're going to tear the box, that's fine. This is, by 8BitDo, the Pro 3 Bluetooth gamepad, the purple style one. So technically what this is a Switch and Switch 2 controller. It also supports Android and Windows. Like I said, I'm going to be doing a whole video on this eventually. But yeah, for the moment right there, that's it. If you want to check it out, I'll put a link in the description as well. They were like, what color would you like? I went with the GameCube style one because, like I said, for me, this is going to be like a Switch 2 product. That's really the only context in which I'll use it, or I guess maybe Switch 1. But yeah, that's what that's for. So huge shout out to 8BitDo. Thank you very much for sending that. Next up, I got another package that I already opened because I wasn't sure what it was. And inside it had 4 games. Now, this bears a story. So, these come to me from France, specifically from a group called Pixel Heart. They are a website. I will put a link in the description there. I had actually ordered a few games from them back in like January of this year. And a bunch of them kept getting delayed, and I was not in any rush. I didn't really care. So I was like, that's fine. And then it just so happens that Pixel Heart is also one of the Dreamcast indie developers / publisher groups. You would know it better as Josh Prod. So they finally had a new game. And so they reached out and they're like, hey, do you want to cover our game? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And then I was like, but if you're going to send it, like, keep in mind I placed an order. And they were like, wait, what? They look at it like, oh, well, we can send some of those now. And I was like, all right, fine. So here's basically what came in there. For the Sega Dreamcast, a new release, Gladmort. This is the North American style. And Gladmort, the European limited edition style. This one has 2 discs. It's the game disc as well as a music CD, and this one is just the game disc. Like I said, this is going to get its own dedicated video because I always cover the Dreamcast indies. But this is supposed to be like probably the best indie Dreamcast game of this year. It's like the most legit 2025 release we've had. I mean, if you guys saw my birthday Dreamcast video earlier this month, you'll know it's been a little quiet on the game front. So it's very nice that this actually showed up. It just unfortunately showed up like right after I made that video, but all the same, very cool. Now, what's also kind of interesting, shout out to all the Neo Geo fans out there. So one thing that Pixel Heart does that I don't think anybody really gives them any credit for, or at least I haven't noticed anybody ever talk about, is that Pixel Heart, I don't know if they bought them out or if they just partnered with them or what, but there was a company called Visco that used to make games for Neo Geo hardware, so AES, MVS, Neo Geo CD, etc. And at some point, Josh Prod / Pixel Heart did a deal with Visco, the modern iteration of whatever Visco is, and said, let's work together. Which is why a lot of the Dreamcast releases they did were Neo Geo CD games where they got the official rights to it. But because they also got the rights to it, they also got the rights to unreleased games. I think Bang Bang Bros was one that they did a while back that they released on various systems. They also were able to go into the archives of whatever else they had and start releasing stuff. So, for example, this is Battle Flip Shot. Now, Battle Flip Shot was released on Neo Geo MVS, to my understanding, and never had an AES release or a Neo Geo CD release. However, this is a Neo Geo CD release, so effectively they just did a conversion over to the Neo Geo CD. And it is officially licensed and supported by Visco. So you go like, is this official or not? SNK did not sign off on this existing, but Visco did. So that's cool. I would think of it more as an indie release, even though it's effectively an official title. You can qualify it however you want. Where it gets even more murky, though, is this. This is Breakers for the Neo Geo CD. Breakers did come out on the Neo Geo CD back in the day and is actually a very expensive release. This is an official reissue through authorization of Visco, but again, not SNK. So it will boot up. It will work just fine on a Neo Geo CD. You could, instead of paying hundreds of dollars for a used copy of the official one, you could technically get the reprint reissue. It is a repro and an official one at the same time. I'm actually genuinely curious what you guys think of stuff like this. Like, with this is an independent game for the Dreamcast. There's no dispute. Sega did not authorize this. They had nothing to do with it. This one, though, Visco totally signed off on it. It's just that SNK didn't. Is it official or not? This one actually existed, this one actually existed on the hardware, where this one did not. Anyway, I picked them up because they're cool just to have Neo Geo CD stuff. But I'm curious what you guys would think about that. And if you want to pick them up, again, I'll put a link in the description. I actually bought these two, the Dreamcast ones, they sent to me for free, just full disclosure. Okay, back to Kansas City Retro. This one was just kind of a bonus pickup that I wasn't intending on. Sort of for the Super Nintendo, I got this. Michael Jordan, Chaos in the Windy City. Okay, now, this is just the box, the manual. There's even a poster inside. Why would I pick this up? Yes, I do have the game, but that's not the reason I picked it up. So this photo, I've told this story before. This photo, the shorts Michael is wearing in this photo, I actually own those. A friend of mine worked on this game back in the day. He told me the whole story. Michael came into the photo shoot for 1 hour. They took a bunch of promo photos. He wore the outfit they gave to him, and at the end he returned the outfit. And my friend's boss got to keep the shirt. He got to keep the shorts. And years later, he gave me those shorts. So what I'm going to do is frame the shorts along with the box and all that stuff. But astute viewers will know, I already had the box. I managed to find it a while back. When I was at Kansas City Retro, though, I found this one, and it was cheap, and it was in incredible condition. It was like, most of the time, this was a very common rental game. Not a lot of people actually bought this, so most of the boxes that survived came from rental stores, naturally in bad condition. The one I have is fine. I think it was privately owned, not a rental unit, but wasn't exactly taken care of the best. This one was, like, pristine. So I was like, okay, that's a huge upgrade. But now, because I have two, I can do one where you see the front, and the other one where you put the back, like in the image. I'll show you this once it's eventually compiled and actually finalized. And also, shout out to a guy named Chris, who I was just telling the story to, and he gave me a free Super Nintendo box protector. That was very nice of him to do. That way I could get this home safely. But yeah, I look forward to having that framed up. Okay, now, two more items. One of which, the first one, is not mine, but I thought you guys would like to see it. So, as I was at Kansas City Retro, a dude comes up to me, his name is Matt, and he's like, Adam, I want to show you something I don't know if you've ever seen before. And I had not. And I put it in this plastic NES case just to protect it. But inside, what he shows me is these 4 silver discs. Now, what these are, it took us a while to figure this out. These are what are known as Dreamcast Silvers. So basically, back in the day, Sega, during the review process, when they would send, copies, like 8BitDo sent me a review unit here, Sega would send review units of games to publishers, magazines, what have you. And they often were not quite as pretty as the retail release. So Sega of Japan would always send a full finalized one. It just says sample on it. And there's a sticker hard printed into the box and on the disc. Sega Europe would do what they call a white label, where it has a completely unique label, but basically was just a plastic case. Sega of America literally just sent these silver looking discs with no artwork of any kind, and they would just write in Sharpie what it was. So this is all 4 discs of Shenmue 1. Now, we did some investigation. There's serial numbers on the back of each disc. This is where my fellow nerds, you might get all Disc 1 and Disc 3 perfectly match the serial number of the final US retail release. They have been dumped. There's nothing interesting on them. Disc 2 was a little strange in that the serial number was completely unique, but, or at least from everything we could tell, it wasn't the same as the retail release. However, the data enclosed was apparently identical. Where it gets a little funky is the Passport disc, which is it was the non-game relevant disc. It was the bonus disc that was in there with online functionality, etc. So when we ripped that, we realized it too had a different serial number and actually contained different data. Now, we are still in the process of figuring out exactly what that data does. From what we can tell, it had one extra file called rpg.bin, and we're not entirely certain what it does. We think, based on what our investigation has come up with so far, we think that what happened was Sega sent these out to companies, the press companies, to cover, and that this bonus disc, they had forgotten to basically unlock the internet mode. So Shenmue Passport, if you're not familiar, when you put it into the system, into the Dreamcast, it had a couple of like functionalities, and you could watch like clips here and there, but it also had this online mode, which was the majority of the content. The final release, as long as the servers were up, would function. Now they don't function anymore, the servers are long gone. But this version, from what we can tell, even if the servers are up, would not go online because they had screwed up. And so they had to change it, but this still went out like that, which kind of makes me think, that means that when they sent out the review copies back in the day, a big component of the game was non-functional, and people had to write articles around it, which makes you wonder how different time would have been if that had functioned. But that's, again, speculative. We're still in the process of investigating this. So I've turned the data over to some of those guys who run like the impossible ports, Falco specifically, seeing if he can deep dive and find anything else. But essentially that's the story. And if you're wondering, is it going to get dumped? Is it going to be public? Yes, that's going to happen. We're just trying to complete the story first so that we have all the information correct at the time of reveal. This is kind of just what we know so far. But I thought you guys would find that cool. And this will be returned to Matt, by the way. This is not mine. He loaned it to me for this purpose. It will be returned to him, unless for some reason he changed his mind, doesn't want it anymore, which I find highly unlikely. But either way, I've also taken the additional step of, at Kansas City Retro, I picked up one of these like hard clamshell cases just to protect it. Okay, now as cool as that is not how we're ending this video. We're ending this video on something truly extraordinary. We're going to go back over to our boy David King here at Kansas City Retro. Now, when I was exploring through David's stuff, and David was very cool about this, because we had the same interests, the same sense of humor, the same, like, I was looking at cartridges and like, oh, look, that has a funny label. Like, I picked up something called Campaign 84, which was about the 1984 presidential election, presumably between Ronald Reagan and Walter Mondale, that I thought was hilarious for the ColecoVision. I didn't buy that, but other random games I just kept noticing and I thought were funny. So there was one that was in his junk bin. Like, he had, cardboard boxes on the ground. It was just various, like, titles, right? And I picked one up, and I just kind of thrown it into a pile of stuff. And he basically was like, oh, is that it? Yeah, you can just have that. That's fine. And I was like, okay, cool. It was just a Sega Genesis game. It wasn't really a big deal. It was a sports game. And so I was like, okay, cool. Whatever. Not going to think about that. Now, as the course of the day goes on, I kept going back and forth. And that's how I eventually ended up with this pile of stuff, right? Now, at one point during the day, I was at my table, and it was getting kind of quiet. It was just kind of like there wasn't much going on. So I started just kind of like, looking stuff up, like stuff I'd picked up, like, oh, I wonder if I got a good deal, that kind of thing, right? And I get to the sports game in question, and I look it up, and because it had a funny label on it, but I didn't know why, so I was just looking it up, and I was like, what I found shocked me, and I was like, no, that can't be right. And I keep digging around, and it keeps coming back with the same story about how what I have is something very special. And I'm like, no. So I take it up to Joe Sullivan in the museum upstairs. Where he was holding onto the Pluto, and I was like, do you know what this is? And he looks at it, and he goes, no. Rental label? I don't know. And I was like, yeah, I don't know either. So, then as I'm rereading the article, I recognize that my buddy Frank Cifaldi is mentioned in it. And I was like, oh, maybe he'll know. So I take photos of this thing, and I send it to Frank. And he responds, like, maybe an hour later, and he's just like, yeah, I think that's real. And I go, really? He's like, we won't really know until we open the cartridge. If you open the cartridge, you'll be able to tell inside. And I was like, okay. So I started walking around looking for a game bit, or whatever they call them, specifically for the Genesis cartridge. And I couldn't find one. I found this one dude who had a store, super nice guy, and I told him what I was thinking, and he was like, yeah, I have them at my store. I'll bring one in tomorrow, and then you can go ahead and open it and, verify it. And I was like, okay, cool. Now, by that point in the show was almost up, and I hadn't talked to David yet because I did not want to go over and be like, here's what I think this might be, without actually knowing. So I just we just said, I'll see him tomorrow on Sunday. So the next day comes, and they did not bring me the screwdriver. They brought the wrong one, so I couldn't open it, which was unfortunate. That was just a miscommunication. It happens. And then I found out David wasn't going to be there. He was only there for Saturday, and I was like, ugh, that's not good. So I wait until I get home, from the convention. I come here on this exact table, and I open up this cartridge. And I take photos, and I send them to Frank. And I send it to a couple other people, including Kelsey Lewin, who they all said, yeah, that's real. And I go, huh. So I seal it back up, and I find David's contact information. And I'm like, I need to talk to you. And to him, that was a little strange, because he was just a guy I'd been hanging out a little bit at the con. For me to randomly want to call him, I think he found odd. But I sit down with him on the call, and I explain, do you know what this was? And he goes, no. And I tell him the whole story, but first I think I should show it to you. I've also put it in a clamshell. A Sega Genesis cartridge, seemingly insignificant. On the other side, you'll see PGA Golf. And you'll again think that's not significant. It is. From Heartbeat Corp. So the story I tell you now is what I told David. From what I gathered, there was a version of the Sega Genesis, I believe, intended for market or even release in like 95 or 96 that was kind of a mutant iteration of the Model 1 Genesis by a company called Heartbeat. And as I understand it, the purpose of the console was to be exercise equipment. It wasn't really meant to be like the normal way we think of a Sega Genesis. And it would be used, you could potentially put it in gyms, you could put it in like retirement homes. I'm not really sure what the marketing intention was there. But it's an extraordinarily rare version of the console. I've only seen it 2 times ever. One was in the National Video Game Museum in Texas, and the other one was in this dude's private collection. Now, that version of the Sega Genesis, the idea with it was they were going to take various games that already existed or make new ones that were specifically exercise themed. The one that's best known is a game called Outback Joey, which is often referred to as the single rarest Sega Genesis release. However, there were other games that had been intended for this platform. But to most people's knowledge, none of them were ever really released. Outback Joey was really the only one. And supposedly only 1,000 units of the system were ever produced. Even less were probably ever sold, and even less probably survive today. It also has its own proprietary controller, much like this Realtek thing, making Outback Joey or any other game that would naturally support it non-functional upon boot without the controller. So, what we're sitting here looking at is another game for that system. Now, apparently, 8 years ago, the story had broken on this. I had never heard of it before. I had heard of the Heartbeat system and the Outback Joey thing, but honestly, it had fallen into the recesses of my brain because it was not something I ever really saw any additional exposure to. I certainly did not know there were any other games for it. So, when I saw this, I just thought, oh, that's a funny looking like rental label. And I was like only kind of serious about picking it up because it was just whatever. But he actually, it was only going to cost $5. And I would have paid him. But he just said, just take that. It's just a sports game. And I thought, yeah, okay. Because if you Google PGA Golf Genesis, a real title comes up. And it's a worthless game. This is an updated version of that game specifically designed for that hardware. Now, based on the article and based on talking to Frank Cifaldi, there are only 2 other known copies of this to exist. And you can hear the cops out there coming to get me because they don't like how much of a deal I ended up with on this thing. Apologies for the sirens. But basically, the game is either considered a prototype, an unreleased version of the game, or is considered the single rarest North American Genesis release. This would be only the 3rd copy ever known to exist. Now, as soon as I fully understood that, that's when I called David, and I was like, you need to know this. Because the last thing I want is you thinking like, hey, you took advantage of me. Like, no, dude, I had no idea any more than you did. Now, David was very cool about it. I told him the whole thing, and he's like, man, honestly, you win some, lose some. Like, I had no idea. And I was like, do you have any memory of where it came from? He's like, yeah, actually. He's like, 10 years ago, he had bought it in a V-Stocks, which is a store throughout Missouri primarily, like used video games and TV shows and Blu-rays, whatever. I've been to a few of them. He found it in there in a junk bin, he thinks, for 99 cents, if he remembers correctly. And he said he thinks he remembers trying to boot it and it didn't do anything, and so he just put it in a box. But he's like, dude, honestly, I cleared like tons of games from there, so I didn't really spend much time with it. And he remembered specifically picking it up because he thought the label was funny. Like the exact same reason I did. But at the time, 10 years ago, there was no information on this title whatsoever at all. And so he just came up with the normal PGA Golf. That came to his conclusion, and he moved on with his day. And there it sat in a box until he sold it to me, effectively, at Kansas City Retro. So once we both understood the whole story, I was like, okay, so we're cool, right? Like, you understand I did not do anything here. Like, I did not know about this. And he's like, yeah, no, we're good. And so what we're actually going to do, by the way, so you guys are curious, in addition to, like, this thing getting out there, my goal with this is we're going to try and dump it as well. I don't have the capacity to dump this. I did dump these. I don't have anything to rip Genesis titles. I am, however, going to meet up with Frank Cifaldi at some point for that purpose. I've also talked to the National Video Game Museum because they actually have one of those Heartbeats Genesis units as well as Outback Joey. And I got permission. At some point, I'm going to go down there and film a video with it. And we're just going to try and put its story out there and preserve it as much as possible. But it's very weird to think that since I'm not technically the owner of the Sega Pluto, even though I get full access to it, this is oddly the single rarest thing I own now, which is incredibly bizarre for me. Because, again, only 3 known copies of this, and if you consider it an official release, which I guess people do, it is the single rarest Genesis release ever, at least that we know of. Where even, like, this is going to sound weird, but I don't know if you know this, the single rarest Mega Drive game or Genesis game prior to this was Tetris, which only has 6 known copies. Even Outback Joey had more than that. So, yeah, baffling. And all in service of a golf game. It's like, why is it always sports titles? Like NBA Elite 11 on the PS3 and stuff like that. But, yeah, anywho. So, the story is still unfolding with this. And when I have more of the assets collected, in other words, I can go to Texas and do the video and all that, we'll make a sit-down, like, formal history of this thing as best as possible. But yeah, it's safe, it's preserved, and I've already had just for the record, I'm not going to name names, I've already had some people coming at me being like, will you sell it to me? Like, I need that for my collection. And I'm saying no. I have no designs on making any money off this thing. I'm a preservationist. I pride myself on protecting stuff as much as I can. And so, no, this is not profit here. So I just want the story out there. I want people to know, and I want people to enjoy it. Maybe it'll be a thing that when I go to cons, I bring the Pluto and I bring this, if anybody cares. It's not as exciting looking as the Pluto. It requires a lot of story. But anyway, for the record, when he said he found it in V-Stocks, it also came out of Kansas, the Kansas side. Missouri, the Missouri side of Kansas City. And the other ones that we know of popped out of Minnesota. So the thought is that some store in the Midwest had a couple of them for some reason, but who knows. Now, to be fair, mine's just the loose cart. The other one is at least featured in a video that, again, was made 8 years ago. Like, the guy had the full case, manual, everything. I just have the cart, and I'm not complaining about that. But, yeah, just... It's not too often anymore I get just completely mind blown by something. And I found this at a con, like in a junk bin. And again, David was very cool about it. So I guess let that be a lesson to people. Like, you can still find cool stuff. It does happen. And, you know, at least this one will be saved from some sort of trash dump. That's the other part that bothers me is, like, any other copies of this that have ever surfaced, I would imagine most people, if the sports game junk, it also has a junky label crap. And if you try to plug it in, it doesn't even turn on. Definitely garbage. So very few probably survived. But I opened it up, like I said, and the board looks completely different than a normal Sega Genesis cartridge. I'll show some photos here, but yeah, just very weird. Anyway, we'll wrap it up there. Again, stay tuned. At some point, videos on this. At some point, I'll show you the full thing there. When I have more information on the Shenmue thing, I'll let you know. Obviously, Dreamcast video and 8BitDo controller are coming. So huge shout out to, obviously, Pixel Heart as well as 8BitDo for supplying me with those. The dude Chris who gave me the case there. Obviously, David, you know, for being really cool about this. Matt for at least loaning that to me. And Chief for selling me this really cool thing. And you know, honestly, just the rest of you guys for just watching. Like, it's still cool to be able to find cool stuff like this and have anybody be excited about it. So, yeah. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. You guys do me a favor. Please like this video, comment down below, subscribe if you've never done that before, and check out all the social media stuff in the description. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, Patreon, Spreadshirt, Travel Channel, etc. I appreciate the support on all those platforms. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all later.